The first impression. In the heart of Manhattan, Crown Motors stood as an emblem of luxury and exclusivity. Known for its gleaming glass walls and an interior filled with the world's most prestigious vehicles, the dealership catered to a clientele as refined as the cars it sold. Celebrities, CEOs, and international elites often graced the showroom floor, discussing performance stats and customizing their dream rides. On any given day, the dealership hummed with the quiet confidence of wealth and power, a space where appearances mattered almost as much as the cars themselves. Nathan Carter, a 39-year-old tech entrepreneur, strolled toward the dealership's entrance with a purpose masked in simplicity. He was dressed in dark jeans, a plain black t-shirt, and white sneakers. The outfit was intentional, an unassuming disguise for a man who had spent years redefining success on his own terms. Nathan had recently acquired Crown Motors, but today, he wasn't there as the owner. He was there as a man who understood the subtle barriers of judgment and prejudice that could exist in spaces like this. Growing up in the Bronx, Nathan had encountered discrimination and condescension more times than he could count. Despite becoming the founder of a multi-billion-dollar tech company, he had seen how appearances still shaped perceptions. Purchasing Crown Motors wasn't just about his love for cars, it was about creating a business that celebrated inclusivity, where every customer was treated with dignity and respect. To test his staff's adherence to those values, Nathan decided to experience the dealership undercover, as an ordinary customer. The polished glass doors slid open, and Nathan stepped into the pristine showroom. The scent of polished leather and new car opulence filled the air. Cars worth millions gleamed under bright showroom lights, sleek Ferraris, imposing Rolls-Royces, and agile Lamborghinis lined up like a parade of mechanical perfection. Nathan admired the craftsmanship, running his hand lightly over the smooth finish of a red Ferrari F8 Spider. From across the room, Josh Miller, one of the dealership's top salespeople, noticed Nathan. Dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, Josh epitomized the polished image the dealership sought to maintain. He had been with Crown Motors for over a decade and carried himself with an air of self-assured exclusivity. As he approached Nathan, there was a subtle shift in his demeanor, a guardedness that hadn't been there when he greeted another customer earlier. "Can I help you?" Josh asked, his tone clipped and professional but noticeably devoid of warmth. Nathan turned to face him, his expression calm. "Yes, I'm interested in the Lamborghini Huracan Spider." He pointed to the sleek convertible near the center of the room, its metallic gray finish catching the light like liquid silver. Josh's eyes briefly scanned Nathan's attire, his lips twitching into what might have been a smirk. "That's one of our more exclusive models," he said, his tone laced with skepticism. "It's priced at over $300,000. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware. I'd like to know more about it." Josh hesitated, his confidence faltering for a split second before he recovered. "Of course," he said smoothly. "But you should know, this isn't the kind of car we just let anyone take for a spin. We reserve test drives for serious buyers." Nathan took a slow breath, his expression unreadable. "And how do you determine who's a serious buyer?" Josh crossed his arms and shrugged, his polished smile returning. "It's not personal. We just need to make sure our cars are in the right hands. These vehicles require a certain commitment." The passive-aggressive undertone wasn't lost on Nathan, but he chose to play along for now. "I'm quite serious about this car," he said firmly. "I'd like to test drive it." Josh chuckled softly, shaking his head as if Nathan had just told a naive joke. "I'll check with my manager," he said dismissively. "But don't get your hopes up." As Josh walked away, Nathan stood by the car, watching him speak with another salesperson. The two men glanced in his direction, laughing quietly before returning to their conversation. It was a familiar scenario for Nathan, being judged, underestimated, and dismissed based on appearances. Before Nathan could dwell on the exchange, a young woman approached him. She was dressed in business casual attire, her name tag reading Sophie Alvarez. Her warm smile contrasted sharply with Josh's aloofness. Hi, sir, Sophie said. Can I help you with anything? Nathan smiled back. Actually, I'm interested in this Lamborghini, but it seems your colleague doesn't think I'm serious enough to test drive it. Sophie's face fell slightly, her discomfort evident. I'm really sorry about that, she said sincerely. Josh can be particular about who he gives his time to. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Nathan appreciated her honesty. Thank you, Sophie. I might just take you up on that. As they spoke, Josh returned, his demeanor as condescending as before. I spoke with my manager, he said. Unfortunately, that car isn't available for a test drive at the moment. But I'd be happy to show you something more accessible. Nathan's expression remained calm, though a subtle tension rippled beneath the surface. And what exactly do you mean by accessible? Josh's smile faltered. I just mean we have options that might be a better fit for someone in your position. Nathan tilted his head slightly, studying Josh. And what position would that be? Josh hesitated, clearly searching for a diplomatic answer. I'm just trying to be practical, sir. These cars are for a certain kind of clientele. For a moment, silence hung between them, charged with unspoken implications. Then Nathan nodded slowly, his voice calm but firm. I see. Well, thank you for your time, Josh. I think I'll take my business elsewhere. Josh shrugged, seemingly unbothered. Suit yourself, he said, already turning away. Sophie watched the exchange with a mix of frustration and embarrassment. As Nathan began to walk toward the exit, she hurried after him. Sir, she said softly, I really am sorry for how you were treated. If there's anything I can do. Nathan stopped and turned to her, his expression softening. It's not your fault, Sophie, he said. But there is something you can do. Anything, she said earnestly. Keep doing your job with integrity, he said. Because people like you are what make businesses worth supporting. Sophie nodded, her smile returning. Thank you, sir. As Nathan stepped outside, the cool Manhattan air greeted him. He glanced back at the dealership, the sleek cars visible through the glass walls. The interaction had been disappointing but not surprising. What Josh didn't realize was that his dismissive attitude had just sealed his fate. For Nathan Carter wasn't just a customer, he was the new owner of Crown Motors. And he was about to show the staff what respect truly meant. The unveiling of intentions. Nathan Carter left Crown Motors that day with a calm demeanor, but inside, he was processing the encounter with a mix of disappointment and determination. The sting of Josh's condescension wasn't new to him, he had faced similar treatment throughout his life. However, this wasn't about his personal pride. It was about something much larger, a systemic issue within spaces like the dealership, where assumptions were made based on appearances, and respect was reserved for those who looked the part. As he sat in his private car, a modestly luxurious electric vehicle that didn't scream wealth, Nathan reflected on his plan. Purchasing Crown Motors had been a business decision, but it had also been a personal mission. Nathan wanted to transform the dealership into a space where everyone felt valued, regardless of race, gender, or how much money they seemed to have. But before he could implement changes, he needed to see firsthand where the gaps in customer service lay. That day's visit had given him all the clarity he needed. The next morning, Nathan arrived at Crown Motors not as a customer but as the owner. He swapped his casual attire for a sharp navy suit paired with a crisp white shirt, his polished leather shoes clicking against the showroom's tiled floor. The transformation in his appearance was deliberate, meant to command respect from those who might have overlooked him the day before. As Nathan entered, he was greeted by the general manager, Tom Ridley, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a practiced smile. Tom had been managing the dealership for years and had grown accustomed to its exclusive clientele. Mr. Carter, Tom said warmly, extending a hand. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. We've been thrilled about your acquisition of Crown Motors. Nathan shook Tom's hand firmly. Thank you, Tom. I wanted to stop by unannounced and get a sense of how things are running on the ground. Tom's smile wavered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. Of course, sir. Everything's in tip-top shape. We pride ourselves on delivering top-tier service to our clients. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Top-tier service, you say? His tone was measured, but there was a hint of challenge in it. I hope that includes treating every client with respect, no matter how they walk through the door. Tom hesitated, unsure of Nathan's intent. Naturally, sir. That's always been our priority. Good, Nathan said simply, his face revealing nothing. I'll be observing today. Don't announce me to the staff, I want to see how they interact with customers when they don't know the owner is watching. Tom nodded, though his unease was palpable. Understood, Mr. Carter. Nathan made his way to the corner of the showroom, positioning himself where he could observe without being too conspicuous. As he scanned the room, he noticed Josh Miller immediately. Josh was standing near a bright yellow Ferrari, speaking animatedly with an older man dressed in a tailored suit. The contrast in Josh's demeanor compared to the previous day was stark, his tone was enthusiastic, his posture inviting. Interesting, Nathan murmured to himself. It wasn't long before another customer walked in, a young black woman wearing a casual jumpsuit and sneakers. She seemed interested in a sleek Porsche on display, but as she approached it, Josh intercepted her. Excuse me, she said politely. I'd like to learn more about this model. Josh's smile was thin and unconvincing. It's a great car, he said, glancing at her outfit before continuing, but it's quite an investment. Have you considered our pre-owned models? They might be more practical. Nathan's jaw tightened as he observed the exchange. The woman's face fell slightly, but she maintained her composure. No, thank you, she said firmly. I'm interested in this one. I understand, Josh replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. But test drives for this model are limited to clients with pre-approved financing. Have you? Before he could finish, Nathan stepped forward. Josh, he said evenly, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. Josh turned, his expression shifting from professional confidence to confusion. Yes, sir. Nathan smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Nathan Carter, the new owner of Crown Motors. Josh's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Oh. Mr. Carter. I didn't realize. That much is clear, Nathan interrupted. He turned to the young woman. Ma'am, I apologize for the way you were treated. Please, let me personally assist you in getting all the information you need about this Porsche. The woman looked surprised but grateful. Thank you, she said softly. Nathan nodded, then addressed Josh again. Josh, join me in the conference room in 15 minutes. We need to talk. As Nathan escorted the woman to a quieter part of the showroom, whispers spread among the staff. Sophie Alvarez, who had witnessed the entire scene, couldn't hide her small smile of satisfaction. She had seen Josh's behavior before but never imagined he would face consequences so swiftly. 15 minutes later, Nathan entered the conference room, where Josh was already seated, fidgeting nervously. Josh, Nathan began, taking a seat across from him. Do you remember me? Josh swallowed hard. Yes, sir. You were in the showroom yesterday. That's correct, Nathan said, his tone calm but firm. And yesterday, you dismissed me, questioned my ability to afford a car, and suggested I look at something more accessible. Today, I watched you do the same thing to another customer. Do you see the problem here? Josh stammered, I didn't mean any disrespect, sir. I was just trying to gauge. Gauge what? Nathan interrupted. A person's worth based on their appearance? Their race? Their clothing? Josh looked down, unable to meet Nathan's gaze. Nathan leaned forward, his voice steady but commanding. Crown Motors is under new ownership, Josh, and the culture here is going to change. We will not tolerate prejudice or condescension toward our customers. If someone walks through those doors, they deserve to be treated with the same respect you would give a billionaire in a three-piece suit. Am I clear? Yes, sir, Josh mumbled. I'm giving you one chance to correct your behavior, Nathan said firmly. But if I hear of anything like this happening again, you won't have a place here. Understood? Josh nodded quickly. Understood, sir. Nathan stood and walked to the door before turning back. Oh, and one more thing. From now on, all staff will undergo training on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That includes you. With that, Nathan left the room, his resolve strengthening with every step. This was just the beginning of his mission to transform Crown Motors, not just as a business, but as a symbol of fairness and respect. A shift in the culture. The morning following his confrontation with Josh, Nathan Carter arrived at Crown Motors with a renewed sense of purpose. His goal was no longer just about making a profit or enhancing the dealership's reputation, though both were undoubtedly important, but about implementing change that would reverberate far beyond the showroom. He had made it clear that the old ways of doing business were not acceptable, and now it was time to take action. He had a vision for the future of Crown Motors, one that was grounded in fairness, respect, and, above all, equality. When Nathan entered the dealership, the atmosphere felt markedly different. There was a quiet unease hanging in the air. Word had spread quickly among the staff about the previous day's events, about Nathan's surprise visit, his conversation with Josh, and the abrupt, stern warning he had given. Some of the employees, particularly those who had been complicit in the unspoken culture of bias, were apprehensive, unsure of how things were going to change or what would be expected of them. Others, like Sophie Alvarez, were more optimistic. She had always believed that the dealership could do better but had been hesitant to speak out, fearing backlash from those in power. Nathan wasn't naive. He knew that instilling real change would take time. It wasn't enough to simply reprimand Josh or offer a couple of corrective statements. He needed to reshape the entire culture of Crown Motors, and for that, he would need the cooperation of every single employee, from the frontline salespeople to the administrative assistants and mechanics in the back. This was going to be a collaborative effort, but it would also require accountability. By late morning, the staff was gathered in the dealership's large conference room. It was a mix of familiar faces, some excited about the changes to come, others anxious about what the future might hold. Nathan stood at the front, his presence commanding, his expression resolute. The room quieted as he began to speak, the weight of his words sinking in from the first sentence. Thank you all for gathering today, Nathan began. I'm sure you've all heard about my surprise visit yesterday. But I want to be clear, this wasn't just a one-time thing for me. This is the kind of environment I want Crown Motors to be, one where everyone, regardless of their background, appearance, or financial situation, is treated with respect and dignity. Yesterday, I saw that we have a long way to go, and I want to fix that. Right now, I'm here to make sure that change happens. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, meeting the eyes of everyone present. It's not just about improving our sales or making our clients feel more comfortable. It's about how we, as a team, represent this dealership. The way we treat people matters. It's everything. Nathan then introduced his plan for change. He was going to implement a comprehensive training program aimed at addressing issues of bias, respect, and customer service. The training wouldn't be just a cursory workshop, it would be ongoing, with periodic assessments to ensure that the lessons were being internalized and applied consistently. It would cover everything from microaggressions and stereotyping to empathy and understanding different customer needs. But it didn't stop there. I understand that changing a culture takes time, Nathan continued. But we will start right now, with small, meaningful actions. For example, we'll be reassessing the way we assign sales leads. It will no longer be based on who looks the part or who fits a certain profile. If someone walks through the door and is interested in a car, they will be given the attention they deserve, no matter their appearance. There was a murmur of agreement among some of the staff, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Nathan could feel the shift in the room, a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. He knew that there would be resistance, but he was ready to face it head-on. Some of you might be wondering, Nathan continued, why this matters so much. Why should we go out of our way to accommodate customers who might not fit our traditional mold? The answer is simple. It's not about the customer's wealth or status. It's about integrity. It's about creating an environment where we aren't just selling cars, we're building relationships. The way we treat people, the way we make them feel when they walk through that door, is what will make them come back, again and again. That's what makes us different from every other dealership. Respect isn't optional, it's the foundation of our business. As Nathan spoke, Sophie couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. She had worked at Crown Motors for nearly 5 years, and in all that time, the dealership had felt more like a place where the staff prioritized profits over people. The subtle biases she had witnessed, the uncomfortable moments when customers were treated differently based on how they looked, had always bothered her. But she had felt powerless to change anything. Now, it seemed, things were going to be different. From today on, Nathan continued, I want you to think about the customers who come in, and how you would want to be treated if you were in their shoes. It's not about assumptions, not about guessing who's worthy of attention. It's about respecting everyone. He paused for a moment, allowing his words to settle before adding, and I'm not just talking about our customers. I'm talking about each other. As a team, we will support one another, regardless of our differences. That's the kind of environment I want to foster here. We're going to hold each other accountable. If you see something wrong, you speak up. If someone is being treated unfairly, you step in. I will not tolerate anything less. Nathan's tone was firm but not unkind. He wasn't angry, but there was an intensity in his voice that conveyed just how seriously he took this mission. This was not a negotiable ideal, it was the future of Crown Motors. At the end of the meeting, Nathan left the staff with one final thought. I'm giving each of you the opportunity to be part of something bigger than just selling cars. You have the chance to be part of a company that sets a new standard, not only in the luxury car industry but in how we treat people, every person. It starts with you. I'm watching closely, and I expect nothing less than excellence. With that, the staff was dismissed, and Nathan returned to his office, feeling a sense of accomplishment. He knew the road ahead would not be easy, there would be moments of pushback, skepticism, and even failure. But he was prepared for that. Change was never immediate. It was always a process. In the coming weeks, Nathan worked closely with the staff, implementing the new training programs and having one-on-one conversations with employees who seemed uncertain about the new direction. Sophie, who had been initially hesitant about speaking up, found herself becoming a quiet advocate for Nathan's vision. She'd noticed the subtle shifts in behavior already, how certain salespeople were making more of an effort to greet customers warmly, regardless of how they were dressed or what car they seemed to be looking for. The awkwardness wasn't gone, but it was being replaced by an intentional effort to be better. Despite the progress, however, there was one person who hadn't yet adjusted to the changes, Josh. He still carried an air of superiority, as if Nathan's new approach was a passing phase that he could simply ignore. Nathan knew he needed to address this before the situation grew worse. Josh had potential, but if he didn't change his attitude, he would have no place at Crown Motors. Nathan would have to be direct again, but this time, he wasn't going to give Josh a second chance. He couldn't afford to. The success of this cultural shift depended on everyone working together, and Josh's resistance could jeopardize it all. The test of leadership. The next few weeks at Crown Motors were filled with tension and transformation. Nathan's vision for a dealership rooted in respect, equality, and opportunity was starting to take shape. Yet as with any major overhaul, progress didn't come without its challenges. The biggest obstacle, Nathan realized, was Josh Miller. Despite the clear directives to foster a more inclusive and welcoming environment, Josh continued to operate as though nothing had changed, displaying a disregard for the new values that Nathan had worked so hard to instill. Nathan had given Josh multiple chances to align with the new standards. Sophie had noticed Josh's dismissive attitude toward customers, especially those who didn't seem to meet the traditional expectations of a luxury car buyer. His reluctance to engage with clients who didn't conform to his biased image of a typical customer was becoming more evident. Josh's attitude wasn't just affecting his relationships with potential buyers, it was spreading through the team, creating an undercurrent of resentment among those who had embraced Nathan's vision. As much as Nathan believed in second chances and the power of mentorship, he knew that leadership required making difficult decisions. If Josh couldn't adapt to the new culture of Crown Motors, then it would be better to let him go and find someone who was committed to the dealership's values. One afternoon, Nathan called Josh into his office. The sun streamed through the large windows of the corner office, casting a warm glow on the leather chairs and the polished wood of the desk. It was a stark contrast to the conversation that was about to unfold, one that Nathan had been dreading. He had always prided himself on being a leader who gave people a chance to learn and grow, but in this case, Nathan knew that Josh had reached the end of his road at Crown Motors. "Josh," Nathan began as the salesman sat across from him, visibly tense, "I've been keeping an eye on your performance and the way you've been interacting with customers. I want to talk about some of the concerns I've noticed." Josh immediately stiffened. His posture was defensive, his arms crossed over his chest as though preparing for a confrontation. "What kind of concerns are you talking about?" he asked, his voice edged with a hint of defiance. Nathan leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I've been hearing feedback from customers and colleagues. Some of the things I've heard have been disappointing. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to, your treatment of customers who don't fit your idea of what a luxury car buyer should look like." Josh's eyes flickered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "I'm just being realistic, Nathan. These people don't have the means to buy the cars we're selling. It's not about race, it's about the reality of the business." Nathan's expression remained unchanged, but inside, he felt a surge of frustration. Josh's words echoed the very biases he had hoped to eliminate at Crown Motors. "I disagree with you, Josh. This business isn't about making assumptions based on appearances or background. It's about providing excellent service to every person who walks through our doors. That includes treating everyone with the same respect, whether they're driving a luxury SUV or a used sedan." Josh shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his defensiveness becoming more evident. "Look, Nathan, I've been in this industry for years. I know how things work. Not every customer is going to have the money to buy a car like a Lamborghini. I'm just being practical here." Nathan stood up and walked to the window, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. "Being practical is one thing, Josh. But when that practicality turns into prejudice, it becomes a problem. You're not treating customers with the dignity they deserve, and that's a fundamental issue." Josh's face reddened with embarrassment, but he remained silent. Nathan could feel the tension in the air. He had to be firm in his decision, even if it was uncomfortable. "You've had chances to adjust," Nathan continued. "But the way you interact with our clients, and the culture you're reinforcing with your behavior, is not aligned with the values we're trying to build here. I'm afraid it's time for us to part ways." Josh's face twisted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You can't be serious. You're firing me for treating customers realistically. You're going to let some PC nonsense run this place?" Nathan's voice remained calm but firm. "This is about respect, Josh. Not politics. This is about treating people as equals, regardless of their appearance. And if you can't get behind that, then there's no place for you at Crown Motors." For a moment, Josh didn't speak. The room was thick with tension. Nathan could feel the weight of the decision settling over him, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Finally, Josh stood up, his chair scraping across the floor with a harsh sound. "Fine. You'll regret this, Nathan," he spat, turning on his heel and storming out of the office. As the door slammed behind him, Nathan let out a long breath. He knew he had made the right decision, but it still felt like a loss. It wasn't easy to let go of someone who had been with the company for years, but Nathan also knew that a dealership built on inequality and bias would never thrive in the long run. He had to lead by example. Nathan called a meeting with the remaining staff, determined to show them that this was more than just about firing someone, it was about protecting the vision they had collectively created. As he stood in front of the team once more, he addressed the room with the same resolve he had displayed the previous day. "Josh is no longer with us," Nathan announced. The room fell silent, some employees looking surprised, others nodding in understanding. "I want to make it clear that we are not here to make judgments based on anyone's background, appearance, or perceived financial status. We are a team, and we are committed to providing a level of service that is unparalleled in the industry. If you can't support that, then this isn't the place for you." He paused for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle in. "But I also want to say this, I'm proud of the progress we've made so far. We've already seen a shift in how we approach our clients, and that's a good thing. Now, let's keep pushing forward. Let's keep building a dealership that reflects our values. And let's make sure that no one, no matter who they are, is ever made to feel like they don't belong." As the meeting came to a close, Sophie approached Nathan, a smile of relief spreading across her face. "Thank you for doing that," she said quietly. "It's been hard to watch how things were before. I'm just glad you're sticking to your principles." Nathan nodded. "It's not always easy, but it's necessary. I can't do this alone, Sophie. It's all of us together that will make Crown Motors a place people want to come back to, not just for the cars, but for the experience." With Josh's departure, the air at Crown Motors seemed to lift. The employees who remained were committed to the vision Nathan had set out. Though change was still in the air, there was a sense of optimism that hadn't existed before. And for Nathan, this was just the beginning. The next step would be proving that Crown Motors could not only survive but thrive, grounded in respect for every individual who walked through its doors. The unexpected shift. Nathan Carter walked into Crown Motors one brisk morning, a slight smile tugging at his lips. There was a feeling in the air that he couldn't quite place, but it was a good kind of energy, one that spoke of new beginnings, possibilities, and tangible progress. The dealership had gone through a difficult period in the last few weeks. With Josh's departure, there had been moments of uncertainty. Some of the staff were unsure about the future, while others, like Sophie, had been quietly supportive of Nathan's vision. But Nathan knew he had to keep pushing forward. He couldn't let setbacks define the business. This was his chance to prove to both himself and his employees that a business built on respect, equality, and genuine service could be successful. As he walked across the polished showroom floor, Nathan was greeted with nods and murmurs of acknowledgement. A few of the salespeople, once distant, now seemed to be genuinely engaged in their work, talking to clients with more enthusiasm and warmth than Nathan had seen before. The transformation, however small, was evident. Over the last few weeks, Nathan had implemented several new initiatives to not only improve the dealership's culture but also enhance customer satisfaction. The first change was subtle but impactful. He had started conducting customer satisfaction surveys, making sure to include feedback about the employees' treatment of clients. This feedback loop allowed Nathan to address any lingering issues before they could become problems. It also provided an avenue for employees to voice their concerns and ideas, making them feel more valued and part of the process. In addition, Nathan had taken the time to host training sessions for the sales team, focusing on diversity, inclusion, and overcoming bias. He wanted every employee to understand the importance of providing an exceptional experience for all customers, regardless of their appearance, background, or income level. The staff had slowly started to adopt this mindset, but Nathan knew that real change would take time. The tangible shift, however, was happening with the customers. In the weeks since Josh's departure, more and more people had started visiting Crown Motors. Word was spreading that the dealership was offering something different, an inclusive, judgment-free space where customers didn't feel stereotyped or pigeonholed. People from all walks of life were now stepping through the doors of Crown Motors, some wanting to buy their first luxury vehicle, others looking to upgrade or add to their collection. Nathan smiled as he watched a young couple walk in, the woman with her toddler in tow. They didn't fit the image of the typical high-end buyer, yet they were treated with the same respect as anyone else. The salespeople greeted them warmly, asking what kind of car they were interested in and offering to answer any questions they had. Nathan's vision was taking root. But as the dealership's reputation grew, so did the pressure from the competition. Crown Motors had always been a well-known name, but the recent changes were starting to make waves in the industry. Other luxury car dealerships, particularly those in the surrounding neighborhoods, were beginning to notice. Some were quietly watching, while others were concerned about the new direction Nathan was taking. One afternoon, Nathan received a phone call from a former colleague, Jason Fuller, who worked at one of Crown Motors' primary competitors, Elite Autos. Jason had heard about the shift at Crown Motors and was intrigued by the reports of its growing customer base. As much as Nathan wanted to focus on his own business, he knew Jason was a trusted source of information, and the conversation could provide valuable insight into what his competitors were thinking. "Nathan," Jason said, his tone casual but with a hint of curiosity. "I've been hearing some interesting things about Crown Motors lately. Word on the street is that your customer base has been growing, and there's been a shift in how people are viewing your dealership. What's going on over there?" Nathan chuckled lightly, leaning back in his chair. "I guess you could say we're doing things a little differently these days. We're focusing on creating a more inclusive, customer-centric environment, making sure people feel respected, no matter who they are. I believe it's resonating with our clients." Jason's tone shifted, though his words remained measured. "That's great, Nathan, but you know as well as I do that it's not just about changing the culture. You've got some heavy competition. Elite Autos has a pretty established clientele, and the big spenders aren't exactly looking for a place where everyone is treated equally. They want exclusivity. They want to feel like they're special. Do you really think this new direction will attract the right kind of customers?" Nathan paused for a moment, thinking carefully. "Jason, the kind of customers I'm attracting are the ones who value authenticity and respect. There's no shortage of people who want to buy luxury cars, but I believe there's a segment of the market that wants more than just a status symbol. They want to feel like they belong, not like they're being judged based on their appearance or income. So yes, I think it's going to attract the right kind of customers, people who care about more than just the label on the back of their car." Jason was silent for a moment, perhaps taking in Nathan's words. When he spoke again, his tone had softened. "You've always been a risk-taker, Nathan. If this works out for you, it could change the game for a lot of dealerships. But don't underestimate the pushback you might face. You're not just challenging customers' expectations, you're challenging the entire culture of high-end sales." "I'm not afraid of that kind of challenge," Nathan replied with confidence. "And neither should you be. There's room in this industry for change. It's just going to take a lot of work." After the conversation ended, Nathan found himself reflecting on the challenges that lay ahead. While the dealership was thriving, the competition was not going to sit idly by. He knew that other dealerships would try to replicate the model he was creating, but he also knew that Crown Motors had an edge: authenticity. They weren't just selling cars, they were selling a vision of inclusivity and respect that other luxury dealerships were overlooking. The next day, Nathan called Sophie into his office. They had become close collaborators over the past few months, and her insights had been invaluable in the transformation process. "Sophie," Nathan said, "I've been thinking a lot about the future of this dealership. The changes we've made so far have been great, but we can't stop here. We need to keep innovating, keep raising the bar. Sophie nodded, her eyes lighting up with interest. I agree. We've come a long way, but there's still so much more we can do. I think we should start looking into community partnerships, maybe offer educational programs or workshops that introduce people to luxury cars in a more approachable way. If we can educate people on the technology and craftsmanship behind these vehicles, it'll make them feel more confident about making a purchase. Nathan's eyes brightened at the suggestion. That's a fantastic idea, Sophie. We can build on the trust we've established with our customers and give them a deeper understanding of what makes these cars so special. Not just the price tag, but the innovation, the engineering, the design. I think it could be a game changer. As Nathan and Sophie continued to brainstorm, a new energy filled the room. The dealership wasn't just a place to buy cars, it was becoming a hub for education, inclusivity, and community. This was Nathan's vision coming to life in ways he hadn't imagined just a few months ago. Meanwhile, across town, Elite Autos and other luxury dealerships were beginning to take notice of Crown Motors' growing success. They knew it wouldn't be long before their clients started to drift towards Nathan's more progressive approach. The luxury car industry was changing, and Nathan Carter was at the forefront of that change. Crown Motors wasn't just selling cars, it was changing the way people viewed luxury, and in the process, it was giving people a sense of belonging that they had never experienced before. The final lesson. Crown Motors was thriving. The showroom buzzed with energy as more customers walked in, not just to admire the luxury vehicles, but to be part of something bigger. Nathan Carter's vision had begun to take root. The dealership was no longer just a place to buy cars, it had evolved into a space where customers could feel seen and heard, a space where luxury no longer meant exclusivity, but respect. This success, however, came with its own set of challenges Nathan had anticipated but still needed to navigate carefully. The competition, particularly from Elite Autos, was not taking Crown Motors' rise lightly. In fact, the executive team at Elite Autos had started to sit up and pay attention to Nathan's model, and their response was not subtle. The luxury car industry was an old guard, one that prized the established norms, discrimination based on appearance, wealth, and pedigree. Nathan's focus on creating an inclusive space had disrupted that norm, and the higher-ups in Elite Autos weren't thrilled about it. They felt their decades-old reputation of exclusivity was at risk. Nathan had always known this might happen. He had experienced adversity before, and he was ready to face whatever came next. But as Crown Motors grew, so did the pressure. He had successfully shifted the dealership's culture internally, but now it was time for the next big step, ensuring that the world, and more importantly, the luxury car buying market, knew Crown Motors was here to stay. One afternoon, Nathan received an invitation to a high-profile charity gala, hosted by one of the biggest names in the luxury automobile industry, Samuel Kingsley, the CEO of Elite Autos. The invitation was unexpected. Nathan had heard rumors about Kingsley's disdain for his new approach at Crown Motors, and he wasn't sure whether this invitation was genuine or a calculated move to try and undercut him. Still, the event was an opportunity he couldn't ignore. It was a chance to see the industry's elite up close, to hear their opinions, and to make sure they knew Crown Motors wasn't going anywhere. Nathan walked into the gala with a mixture of anticipation and caution. The venue was elegant, a grand ballroom with chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. The room was filled with people in sharp suits and gowns, sipping champagne and laughing at jokes that seemed to ring hollow to Nathan. It was the perfect setting for networking and showcasing one's status. The kind of place where someone like Nathan, a self-made man, was supposed to feel out of place, yet he stood confidently in the midst of it all. As he mingled with other guests, Nathan couldn't help but overhear the whispers. He caught snippets of conversation about Crown Motors, the dealership's rising customer base, and how different it was compared to the traditional luxury car dealerships. Some of the comments were favorable, but there were others that carried a tone of skepticism. It wasn't lost on Nathan that many of these guests came from the old guard of the industry, those who had spent years building reputations on exclusivity. At that moment, Nathan spotted Samuel Kingsley, the CEO of Elite Autos, speaking with a group of high-profile industry leaders. Kingsley was a tall man with a commanding presence, and he wore a look of calculated self-assurance. Nathan knew this was a pivotal moment. He had a choice. He could let the old ways of the industry continue to dictate the terms, or he could challenge the status quo once and for all. Gathering his confidence, Nathan walked over to Kingsley's group, offering a warm yet firm handshake. "Mr. Kingsley, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," Nathan said, his voice steady. "I've heard a lot about Elite Autos, and I must say, I've been quite impressed with your track record." Kingsley turned toward him, his eyes scanning Nathan with an air of curiosity mixed with faint amusement. "Ah, Nathan Carter, the man who's shaking things up at Crown Motors," Kingsley replied. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to be here tonight. I thought you'd be busy running your little dealership." Nathan smiled, not rising to the bait. "We're busy, yes. But we're doing something different. We're trying to create a space where people don't have to feel like they're being judged based on their wealth or appearance when buying a car. Luxury doesn't have to come with exclusivity. It can be about respect, not exclusion." Kingsley raised an eyebrow, his expression hardening slightly. "Respect," he repeated, almost incredulously. "Nathan, what you're doing is admirable, but it's not the way the industry works. This is a business of status. You can't just let anyone walk in off the street and expect them to buy a multi-million-dollar car. Customers want to feel like they've earned the privilege. They want to feel special." Nathan stood tall, his confidence unwavering. "And that's where you're wrong, Mr. Kingsley. It's not about whether or not they've earned the privilege. It's about giving people a chance to feel they belong, no matter who they are. That's what luxury should be about: accessibility, equality, and respect. People don't buy these cars because they want to flaunt wealth, they buy them because of the craftsmanship, the engineering, and the experience. I'm just trying to give them that experience without all the judgment." The words hung in the air for a moment. Nathan could see the wheels turning in Kingsley's mind. There was no doubt that the CEO was used to getting his way, and Nathan knew this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. But for the first time, Kingsley looked slightly unsettled. His usual air of control was faltering, and Nathan could see that his words had made an impact. Kingsley cleared his throat and took a sip of his champagne. "I see," he said, his voice more measured now. "Well, Nathan, you've certainly made a name for yourself. But this business is more than just idealism. It's about the bottom line. I'm not sure if the market will ever fully embrace what you're trying to do." Nathan nodded, a small but resolute smile on his face. "Maybe. But the bottom line is changing. People are starting to care more about the values a business represents, not just the product. And in the long run, that's what will make Crown Motors stand out. It's not just about the cars. It's about the culture we're creating. A culture of respect." Kingsley didn't reply immediately. Instead, he took a moment to study Nathan, perhaps reconsidering his previous judgment. Nathan could see that his message had hit home, but Kingsley was too entrenched in his own ways to fully embrace the change Nathan was advocating for. Still, the conversation marked a subtle shift. Kingsley didn't dismiss Nathan entirely. Instead, he gave a nod of respect, acknowledging that Nathan had a point, even if he didn't fully agree with it. As the night went on, Nathan continued to network and engage in conversations with other industry leaders. But he was no longer focused on winning approval or validation. He knew that what he was doing at Crown Motors was right, and the true measure of success wasn't going to come from the old guard. It would come from the customers who appreciated the values he was instilling in his business, the customers who didn't need to prove themselves with their wealth but simply wanted a place where they could feel valued and respected. By the time the gala ended, Nathan had made a significant impact on the room, even if it wasn't immediately apparent. The industry had heard his voice, and it would be hard to ignore the message he was sending. He wasn't going to play by the old rules. Crown Motors wasn't just about selling luxury cars. It was about changing the game, one customer at a time. As Nathan left the event, he felt a sense of pride. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more resistance, more people who doubted him, and more challenges to overcome. But Nathan was ready. He had already proven that respect, authenticity, and inclusivity could create success. And now, the world was beginning to take notice.